Okay, let's talk about a concept that I think has been misunderstood for a very long time. And whenever I bring it in therapy, people sometimes are like, "Whoa, violin, big word. I don't know if that describes what, I have experienced. I was a kid and it wasn't that big of a deal. I just, it's okay, and I'm over it." The word trauma. So let me just maybe clarify a couple of misconceptions around it. So, trauma isn't just, big things like a car crash or extreme situations. It can be as simple as being yelled at. It can be as simple as being shamed for something. Feeling completely alone when you needed someone. That can be very traumatic. It's anything that overwhelms you in a moment when you didn't have the tools or the support to handle it. Anything that overwhelms you in a moment when you didn't have the tools or the support to handle it. It's not about how big the event was, it's about how it landed in your system. And to give you an example on that, it could be, for example, that a child or when you were a kid, back in the day, for some cultures, it was kind of normal for little kids to be left alone at home, right? And even if nothing had happened, just that sense of being left alone repeatedly when you might not have felt safe, or you were scared in a house by yourself, or you were scared of darkness, and your parents just had things to do and they left and came back, that can be very traumatic for a 5 year old or a 6 year old. So, my encouragement to you is don't underestimate what trauma could be for you and things that you may have experienced. Now, things like that could have happened with you and it didn't land in a negative way in your system, then it's not traumatic to you. But to somebody else, it did land in a way that was really rough, and therefore it is really hard for them and it can be traumatic. And so much of what happens after that in a person's life can be stemming from something as simple, if you will, as those events. The other thing to keep in mind is sometimes the event itself isn't huge, but it's repeated often. Again, I will follow with the same example that I gave. So being alone at home. Nothing happened, it was just a half hour run to the store and coming back, but it continues to happen, and it happened several times. And it could have happened at times where, you had a bad day at school and you wanted support and you wanted connection, and your parents were busy, doing their own thing. Or maybe parents are kind of around in the house, but they're not really available. So that can also be very traumatic to a person's system. So I'm going to give you a definition. I'm going to read a definition. So trauma is what happened to you. It's the moment. It's the experience. It's the event. A car accident, a yelling, being shamed, being beaten, being raped. Another word that is used for trauma is overwhelming life experience. So, the biggest key to identifying something as being traumatic is my reaction to it, that overwhelm. And I don't know anybody who hasn't had something in their life that's been overwhelming for them. And so I guess what I'm trying to get at is we've all actually experienced trauma to a certain degree in our lives. We live in a culture that promises the 5 easy steps that will help you change in 21 days. Break a habit, start a streak, fix yourself with enough willpower, right? But trauma doesn't work that way. And it's really important for us to realize that what looks like a bad habit is usually a survival strategy. It's often actually a survival strategy, something that your body learned to protect you. So it learned that tool to protect you when danger left you no other choice. You just couldn't do it any other way. So it builds that protector for you. because of a traumatic experience. So it's not something that can be changed and fixed so easily and so quickly. Shutting down is one of them, a very, very common protection technique when someone has gone through traumatic events in their lives. Lashing out, numbing, right? Whatever method we use by numbing, and a lot of addictions fall under that category. Perfectionism, right? That's one of them. And these aren't flaws in your personality. They aren't shortcomings. They aren't moral issues that you haven't fixed, right? They were your body's way of keeping you safe. And for a long time, and maybe until now to a certain degree, they help. And so we can't deny the fact that these things have been helpful and have been protective measures that were effective. And this is why quick fixes, they fall really flat. They don't really work. You can't punish or discipline a trauma response into disappearing from your system, right? So if willpower was enough, you would have fixed this already. You probably we would all be in a much better place if I'm being really honest. So healing, it happens in a much deeper way than just that. In your nervous system, that's where the healing needs to happen. So as it slowly, when your nervous system slowly learns that safety is possible again, your system starts healing and change starts happening, and those habits are no longer controlling you, and you have the ability to regulate some of these pieces. So real change rarely looks dramatic. It's not like all of a sudden you wake up and you're like, oh my gosh, it's like a push of a button and now I'm different. And if you've been doing therapy with me for a while, you know that to be true, right? But this is just a word of encouragement to you if you are working on something, have been working on something, or resisting working on something. Yeah, the journey can be difficult, but your system actually can learn that safety is possible. And so it shows up in very small shifts sometimes. A breath that settles you down, a night of rest without feeling dread, reaching for connection instead of isolating. Like these little decisions that you may start making when you're encouraged to make some of these decisions and healing starts in your nervous system. These are not small wins that accumulate over time. They're actually your nervous system practicing safety. And practicing rewires your brain. Every time you make a decision to take deep breaths when your system is overwhelmed and you're dysregulated, that's another time that you are practicing to show your nervous system that safety is possible. And over time, it's not that practice makes perfect. Your brain actually rewires and starts understanding safety in a different way and starts believing that safety is possible again. So the climb towards that may be slow, but here's what makes it worth it. Healing doesn't just take away pain. It creates space for joy, right? So pain isn't all of a sudden disappearing or gone. But when you do the healing work, there is more space in you to receive joy, to receive connection, to create connection and have that be consistent. And you can actually start trusting for feeling, at home in your own body, because that usually gets lost when we experience trauma. We feel unsafe within our own selves. And so to feel at home in my own body again, what an amazing thing to accomplish. And again, the climb is slow, but it is possible. And that's something that no quick fix can ever give you. So just keep in mind that trauma responses are not bad habits that you can change. They are survival strategies that your nervous system wired in that it wired it inside of you to keep you safe. And what we're working on, and what I encourage you to really think about these days or this week, is what am I doing to rewire my nervous system? What are little steps am I taking? What are regulation strategies am I using that I'm using to practice in order to rewire my nervous system so that I can feel safe again in my own body. I know that in therapy I talk about a lot of my clients about that. So if you've started doing something and maybe you stopped, this is an encouragement for you to start again, or just pick one thing that you've learned. And if you don't know anything, start with breath. Breath is always a good place to start, to teach yourself to regulate again, to teach yourself safety again. Okay, and that's something that we can always also talk about. All right, so happy thinking.